We now continue with Smurf.
Forgive my not so good English, but I have a story that I want to share that happened to me probably around 20 years ago now. I grew up in Slovakia, and in my youth in my village there was not so much for us kids to do except go to school, do work for our parents, and try to learn the trade, or go and explore and goof off like idiots. Naturally, where I lived had lots of deep forests that you could get lost in for hours, but it very quickly becomes all the same and you get bored. As kids, we got bored even quicker than adults, and so the novelty wore off. Deep forests aren't the only plentiful thing where I lived though. There are lots of cave formations and things like that. Most of them are just really small outcroppings that do not go very far, but even these small ones filled us with excitement. We would go and investigate, and sometimes make little finds here and there. We found animal bones in one of them one time, and it looked like an animal had made some kind of a den there. We would turn these places into our own little hideouts, and would hang out in them for hours. We would steal beer and drink. I was 16, so this was normal here. People drink really young where I am from, and then explore even more. Eventually, this also got boring, and we wanted more. We wanted more thrills. School was making our brains ache, and working was making my body ache, and we were desperate to cling to being kids. And then my buddy, we will call him Tomas, said he had found a new cave that is unlike the others. My other friend, Stefan, and I rolled our eyes, but he assured us this one was an adventure. He told us it was in the Slovak karst. He said that there were so many caves here, but that he heard a rumor that there are still so many that are unexplored. He said his uncle had equipment that we could borrow and then give back before he notices. He said it was easy. We would pick one, explore, eat some food, and then we could say that we conquered it and that we were the first in the world. Me and Stefan shut him down instantly, but Tomas did not shut up for about a week. He went on and on and on until we had too many to drink one night and agreed to go the next day so he would leave us alone. I regretted it instantly the next morning when I felt sick from beer and anxious about going somewhere so scary. Tomas practically dragged us there himself. He brought so many things I did not know what to do with. He gave us helmets with lights, and he had rope and food for all of us. I asked him why his uncle had this, and he told me his uncle used to do this before he got old and rickety, and that his uncle told him lots of stories, which is how he came up with the idea. There was still lots of light in the sky when Tomas dragged us to this outcropping that was through some deep woods. It was in the wall, between two big beech trees, and it had roots and moss growing out of it and all around it. I don't even know how he found it. I think if he were not looking for it, then any normal person would just walk right past. Tomas practically ran straight ahead into it on his own, but I shouted at him to wait. Immediately, he gets really mad and tells me not to spoil his fun, but I just have this really bad feeling. My skin has this itchy feeling, and I can just tell that something is wrong about the cave. It feels unsafe. I tell him, what if we get stuck? He tells me his uncle knows we are here and knows people who can rescue us in a flash. I did not really believe him, but I did not want to be seen as that guy, the pussy who ruins it for his friends. Our village is not big, and so everyone would know, and I would get a reputation. We had to crouch just to get inside, and I got dirt all over my arms and elbows. The second that we got inside the cave, it felt so cold, and I wish I had brought warmer clothes. It's like there was a wall at the cave entrance, and the second you cross it, it goes from normal weather to pure winter freezing. I started asking Tomas what he knew about this cave, because he must have found out about it somewhere. The place was so echoey, and I could hear my voice coming back from everywhere. Every time one of us talked, I heard this faint crumbling sound, like my voice was causing something to break and fall with the echo. He told me that it was his uncle who told him. He told him a story of how back in the 1950s, when we were Czechoslovakia still, that two cavers went missing in there. His uncle was part of a search and rescue team to find them, but they only found one of them. He said he was all just really quiet and meek and did not even seem scared. When they asked him what happened to his friend, all he could say was that his friend fell when he took a misstep and some rocks gave way underneath his feet. Everyone in the village thinks he murdered the friend, but they could not risk resources or people just in case the truth was being told. They searched the immediate area in the cave obviously, but could not find a single trace of the other hiker. I got so mad at this idiot and told him that we were all turning back right now. I asked him how he could be so stupid as to keep this story from us. We got into an argument and I punched that idiot in the face, and Stefan had to stop us from fighting. We were shouting and screaming at each other, and Stefan suddenly grabbed me by the mouth and told me to be quiet. We stopped fighting for a second, but I could not tell what he said it for. I started to talk again, and he shushed me quickly, and we heard something echo, but it was not me or Stefan. We heard this low rumble sound, but we did not feel anything, and we can hear this skittering kind of sound. It sounded like tiny little legs, animal legs, something really small, moving quickly over the stones and rock repeatedly. Now I was even more worried, because what if something bites us and we get rabies? Stefan was fed up. He told us to hurry up and that we would see the stupid cave and then go back home. Tomas agreed and they walked off without me and did not even look back. I was tempted to go back home right then and there, but I was scared to walk back through the cave on my own. Plus, the headlamps that Tomas had brought were shit. They were really weak and dim and only lit up so much in front of us. I don't know if they were faulty and old or just cheap. I ended up hurrying up and running after them and catching up. It was not long until we came to this weird kinda crossroads in the cave. Literally, there was a thin piece of membrane-like wall in the middle with two entrances that looked just about big enough that we could crouch through them. Both of them were incredibly dark and offered nothing when we shined our lights. They looked identical. One looked to turn a corner left and one looked to turn a corner right. Tomas asked us heads or tails, and I told him to take this seriously, that if we are not careful, one of those passages might get one of us hurt. But Stefan played along because he was fed up. He looked sick of our shit. Tails won and we went left. Very quickly, we came across this really narrow passage. Just to even get in, we would have to get right onto our bellies and slide ever so slowly through it, otherwise we would never make it through. I said that we should check the other way first, but Tomas was already crawling through. He was moaning the whole time and said that the ground was sharp and cutting him, but he eventually squeezed in. The passageway was quite long. I think I remember it took us 15 to 20 minutes just to squeeze our way through. I had to take off my helmet that had my light. My head was way too big, and I could not squeeze it down low enough. I thought I was going to get stuck, but Stefan kept stopping every few feet and would yank me by the arm. I got a big bruise on the side of my head from this because it was right next to the ceiling and was being squeezed. We did not even make it out the whole way before hearing Tomas scream, which echoed all throughout the cave, and we heard those same weird crumbling and skittering noises again. We shouted for him and asked what was wrong, and he started laughing when we did. I said stop playing around, and he said it was bones. Why did he find this funny? I asked him what was wrong with him, and he kept laughing and said that it was obvious that they were not real. He said some idiot probably put them there to scare people, but I told him that no one would waste their time doing that, especially through such a tight section. He kept laughing and reached down and picked one up, but immediately threw it back down and made this disturbed face. He straight away shouted that it was wet, and he came over to me and wiped his hands on my shirt. I would have kicked his ass again if Stefan did not stop me. We could not tell what kind of bones they were. We just assumed they were an animal so that we did not scare ourselves. We did not want to consider it could be from anything else. After a tiny bit more walking, the cave really opened up. It opened up into this big chamber that had a lot of space and had a high ceiling. There was tiny specks of light coming through right above us, but I could not tell from where. It really helped since I did not have my light anymore. The chamber was weird and felt different from the rest of the cave. I wondered where we were under and where all the space suddenly came from. It was even colder inside this chamber too. I noticed it straight away. There was some kind of wind or chill flowing through here and hitting me. There was something on the walls of the cave. I couldn't read it because it was not in Slovak or Czech. It looked like it was in Cyrillic, but I could not guess if it was Russian or a different one because I did not study any language in school except a little bit of English because it is mandatory for us as first language to learn. They were just what I think were single words carved into the wall in some places. They had marks near them too, some really dark color that I could not make out. That was not the oddest part though. There were like 5 different other entrances/exits, aside from the one that we crawled through. One you could even stand up in. It seemed like every passage led into this place, and that you had to go through here to be anywhere else. There were more bones in here. They were lots of different sizes, so I could not tell what they came from. At the far end of the chamber, where there was not any tunnel, where it just kind of ends, we found what looked like a shrine. It was placed atop some kind of stone pillar that came up to around our heads. There was a little figure of something, carved from wood, that I did not know what it was. Alongside it were some lit candles, and some weird liquid spilled over it. It looked pure black, and the way it had dried, it actually looked like a lump of something. Like when you have a blister and it gets big. It was like that but black, and when I touched it, all I felt was rock hardness. There were also more bones scattered underneath the shrine. There seemed to be more here than anywhere else. The whole time we were in this chamber, I heard more of the little running, but it sounded closer than before. I said that we should go, since this was it, but Tomas said no. Stefan agreed with me this time, and said this was it, but Tomas got mad, and said that we needed to go into every single passage. We ignored him this time, and started walking back. Tomas got really mad, and we saw him trying to rip the shrine off of the pillar, and I assume tried to throw it in our direction. He yelled, "Hey assholes," and when he tried to lift it, he ended up breaking it. He put too much of his weight on it, and it was so old it broke, and he slipped and knocked down the pillar, which also crumbled slightly, and he shouted as he fell. This was the first time we had properly made noise since getting into the chamber. We had been practically wordless looking at these things, but now Thomas's shout was echoing, but it would not stop. The echo kept going, and it was like an infinite loop, over and over. And I felt something. I felt something in the floor. I felt some kind of a vibration. It felt like the ground was shaking, but only very slightly, and you would not notice it if you were not paying attention. This goes on for a little while, and the echo of Thomas eventually crescendos, and it gets high-pitched, and it sounds like a really high-pitched screech, and I had to cover my ears because it hurt me so badly. And then the vibration stopped for about a minute, and then, near where Thomas had fallen, where the wall was cracked a little bit, I saw something crawl out of it. It looked like a tiny little bug, but it had lots of legs, and it was very hairy. I don't know what kind of bug it was. It was just long and hairy, and it looked to have some kind of pincers on the end. I had never seen any kind of bug like this before, at least not in Slovakia. Tomas immediately stood up and waited for this bug to get close enough, and then he stomped down really hard and laughed. He squished it completely underneath his boot. When he did, I smelled this awful smell. It smelled like a bad fart. After about a minute of us saying ew and Tomas laughing, we saw another one come out of the wall, but it was from a different place. Tomas saw this one and lifted his foot to get ready to do the same thing, and we begged him not to because it smelled so badly. Tomas stomped his foot down hard and began laughing, but he immediately stopped and said, "Ow." I guess he must have missed, and maybe the bug gave him a little bite. He wasn't wearing boots, just these little crappy shoes, and he did not even have socks on. We were really poor, and sometimes if our socks got all damaged, we might go without them. He is jumping from one foot to the other and is yelping and talking about it burning, and we asked if he got bitten, but he was not even responding. He looked to be in a lot of pain. He was hitting his ankle really hard and slapping it until eventually he started hitting other parts of his body higher up, which made me confused. I asked if he had lost his mind, but he told me to shut up. I saw another one of these bugs come out of the same place, and I laughed and told him to watch out or he might get bitten again. Tomas got mad and shouted at me and raised his foot to stomp again. But when he brought it down, he yelped again, and I saw something weird happen with his foot. I saw the side of his foot start to bulge, and then I saw the bulge start moving up his body. The bulge was long and it looked like something moving in there. I know that does not make sense. He was pretty much screaming at this point and asking me for help, but me and Stefan did not really know what was wrong. This whole time we could hear the skittering sound, and it was really loud now. It sounded like lots of little feet running back and forth just in the next room over, and it was getting louder and louder and closer and closer. I saw more bugs coming out of the same cracks, quite a few of them now, and Stefan ran over to try and kick them away. But it didn't work. I saw them. I saw them climb Stefan's foot up to his ankle, and I saw them force themselves underneath the skin. I did not see any kind of wound. I don't think they bit him. 1 second they were crawling, and the next second they moved their pincers, and all I could see was a bulge wriggling slowly up his ankle. I shouted for Stefan to come back over here, but he was not paying enough attention. Tomas was now writhing on the floor and crying, and I saw him rip his shirt off. I saw these bulges. They were in his arms now. They were just slowly wriggling and moving up his arm underneath his skin, and Tomas was hitting himself and clawing at them to try and get them to stop, but it did not do anything. I watched it eventually wriggle its way up his arms, and then I saw it move its way across his cheek. I saw the space behind his eyes and the skin bulge before moving to his forehead, and then the bulge disappeared. Once this happened, he stopped hitting himself or trying to fight. He just let out this weird, high-pitched sound, kind of like earlier, the kind that no human could just make on their own. And then there was a tiny rumble that I could feel underneath me again. And then it was like a nightmare from here. I pulled up and away toward a tunnel, but Stefan was too focused on these things crawling in his skin. But more of them started to come over from the cracks of the walls, really quickly now. I saw, I don't know how many, rush over to where Tomas was laying, and I saw them all cover him. Some went straight for his head, and others a different part of his body. I never saw any blood or any kind of wound. And while they were still moving toward him, I saw Tomas start to stand up. But he stood up weirdly. It was like someone who didn't know how to walk or move trying to get up for the first time. He moved so jerkily, and almost like a puppet who can only move a little bit at a time and not fluid movements. I remember only flashes from here. I remember him taking a step forward, but he did it in 3 parts, and he did not respond when I tried to talk to him, when I begged him to come with me. And he did not move his head when he moved. His head was still facing a different way, even though he was taking steps forward. And the bugs were still coming. It did not make sense for them to still be here. What do bugs even eat? How were they eating in a cave? I pulled Stefan by the hand and forced him to run with me, and I could hear footsteps, actual human steps, moving now. They started really slowly, but I could hear them get faster and faster, and I knew they were Tomas. I could hear the bugs still moving. Stefan was so slow. We thankfully did not need to crawl through anywhere this time, but he was too focused because they were still bulging. I saw one in his arm. I handed him my tool I had. It's the one with all of the knife and other things on it. It has every tool, but I don't know the name in English. I handed him that, but he was too scared to cut and just kept hitting. I could hear the steps closer, and I could see more bugs crawling out of little cracks, and I felt one. I felt it. It must have reached me, because I felt my legs start to burn. And the only thought I had in my head was that I must stop running and stand still and get rid of it. That I must stand still and get it out, but I managed to stop myself from listening to this thought and just kept on running. It was a burn that traveled up my body, and like an electric shock from static, and I could feel my leg go a little bit numb and feel a little bit weaker. I felt tired, even though I barely had been running. I remember at some point, Stefan had just stopped running and stood still and was just facing the wall. I ran back to grab him and pull him, but he was too strong and would not follow me anymore. He was not even trying to hit himself anymore, and he was just standing there, carrying my knife tool. I kept running and looked behind me only once, and I saw him on the floor and bugs running over him. I saw Tomas next to him too. He stopped and touched him, but I don't remember what he did. I remember running and my legs burning harder and harder, but I felt the air change and not feel so cold anymore. And then I remember seeing some light and being so close to getting outside. I remember the second I got outside, I could not run anymore, and I just laid down on the grass even though I needed to keep going. I did not have any energy left. I felt drained and sapped of energy. I remember once I hit the ground, I heard this pop and squelch and something just burst out of my leg. Like there was so much blood and one of those bugs fell out and dropped to the grass and I saw it run. I had to tie up my leg with my shirt because I was bleeding too much. After that, the next few weeks were a blur. I did not know what to tell my parents, so I hid and skipped school and lied until people knew anyway and found out. They knew Stefan and Tomas were missing, and they blamed me. Their parents said I went with them, and that it was my fault. Cue me crying and trying to explain that something absolutely impossible happened in that cave, and no one believed me. I told them every detail I said here, and my mother said I was crazy, and my dad hit me and made me hide away in shame. I remember Stefan's uncle asking and coming to speak with me. He asked me what happened again, and I said the exact same thing. He told me that a rescue was going to look for them. He said the cave had something wrong with it. He said it wasn't the first time people acted oddly after going in there. No one found either Stefan or Tomas. Their parents called me a murderer, and my parents could not even look at me. I was really sick for like a week afterward. It felt like the flu, but I threw up almost every day. There were bits of black and also blood in my vomit. We had to leave the village because people hated me. All my father's hard work in house and job just gone. Once I turned 18, he told me to go on my own and not bother to come back. I ended up moving to Czechia, and the rest from there does not matter. I know a lot of people on here do not believe and think it's all stories. I was young and an idiot, but I know that this happened. I don't know what kind of things can do that. I've never seen any bug that does that. Has anyone else ever seen anything as weird as this? Hey, hope you've enjoyed the story so far. If you want to hear more, make sure to subscribe, like the video, and leave a comment because it lets YouTube know you like the content and helps more people to see these videos. My next big goal for the channel is 100,000 subscribers, and as a celebration, I will be doing a Q&A video once we hit that goal. Thank you, and back to the stories. Alright X, here is my spooky story for the day. I recently moved right into the middle of the Mojave Desert in California. I naturally got into dirt bikes. There are miles and miles of trails out here, and we are like 30 miles away from any kind of city. There is a track where I live that is deserted most of the time, but I don't really frequent that. I prefer trail riding. So out where I ride, there is a lot of flat land and 3 big hills about a mile away from each other. Every time I go to ride, I go a little bit further. I eventually make it to the 3rd big hill. It was amazing, perfectly quiet, just the sound of wind that never stops blowing around here. I hop back on my bike to go a little further, and I was overcome with this gut-wrenching terror that came out of nowhere. It felt like I was being watched, I guess, but I could not see shit. It's all mostly scrub brush and big rock outcroppings. So I shit my pants and got back home as fast as I could. That was about 2 months ago. Today I went out for my weekly ride, and I figured I would go back to the 3rd hill. I decided that I was being irrational the last time I went there. The isolation must have gotten to me. Plus, I've been riding a lot longer, so now there is no reason to be frightened. I go out and get to the 1st hill, stop and relax for a bit, smoke a cigarette, and listen to the silence. I then got back on the trail and toot on up to the 3rd hill. I was not even thinking about the last time I was there. Everything was so great, so I go even further. Past the 3rd hill is just a lot more wavy smaller hills and a lot more giant rock things. I knew people go out here sometimes because there were other tire tracks, but I spotted what looked like a cave entrance. Even if it wasn't a cave, someone could definitely fit underneath the rock. At the entrance of this opening, there was a pile of rocks about the size of a hand, all stacked up pyramid style. I took note of that and kept going, but as I passed this thing, I hear like a goddamn guttural croak/scream. It sounded like a raven but higher pitched and loud as hell. I know the sounds my bike makes, and it was not that. I rode so fast that I probably would have died if I crashed. I got lost as hell in those hills, but eventually I made it back home. I did not stop feeling that being watched sensation until I got back between the first and second hill. Then it just went away. I got back home safely. I am probably never going back that way again. There are stories in my area about blue eyes, some kind of creature that supposedly lives around here. Not sure if it has any merit, but holy shit, it sure felt like it. That's all. I have absolutely no idea what could be out there, if anything. I need a riding buddy. If the story that you just told me is true, and not just a mere role-playing, what you saw was a residual memory of the nun. I had a somewhat similar experience when I go traveling to Papua New Guinea, involving a bit of cave and deceased man of World War II. It is my holiday break. I decided to get lost by traveling to Papua New Guinea for 2 weeks. One day, I go staying in a one native man house at Biak 4. He invited me to visit a site named Mojave Cave, and as some kind of a memorial monument of World War II. He said the cave was used by the Japan Army in World War II as a hiding place when military aggression happened. More than 6,000 soldiers hid there in the past. One day, the cave was destroyed by the order of General Douglas MacArthur using a bomb and gallons of gasoline to burn them all to ashes. Almost all of the Japanese soldiers died, burned alive inside because of that. Those who ran away and got caught were held as prisoners of war or were killed on sight. He said to this day, the ghosts of those buried alive often wander around the site, from sounds of soldiers marching, objects around site moving by itself, to apparitions that have been seen there. A man, let's call him Robert, and his son who guards the site, told me they often hear faint whispers near the mouth of the cave, asking them to unbury the remains of the soldiers so that they can escape. I have also seen some kind of apparition when the sun sets. I saw a soldier dressed in white uniform walking to the cave. He looked at me for a split second and then just faded away. I told Robert what I've just seen. They said it's normal. The locals used to see them too, but now they never show themselves. They only show themselves to new visitors. Well damn, I'm a lucky one, eh? I was about 7 years old when I experienced this. I watched my dad murder my mom. He tells me to keep my mouth shut, that he will hurt me if I don't, and that she deserved it, that God told him to end her life. He then drags her body out of the house. I hide underneath my bed for the next few hours, just crying and losing my shit. I don't know what to do. I don't even know what happened. Suddenly I hear a shout. "Anon, come down. Dinner is ready, and bring your father too." What the hell? I tiptoe outside of my room and see my dad creeping outside of his. We both sit at the table, confused. She serves us a meal. She looks just fine. She sounds just fine. She is just fine. I glance at my father and he has no idea what is happening. I glance at my mother and she does the shush gesture. Nobody ever mentions it ever again. They separated and are doing just fine. For all intents and purposes, my mom is healthy and in a good spot. My dad is a raging alcoholic and always under the influence of whatever drug he can get his hands on. She died. She was murdered. I watched her die with my own 2 eyes. I still don't know what happened. This happened to me today. I was hanging at an elderly friend's house. I'm just chilling as usual in his living room, watching TV. I hear my name said softly twice from friend's room. "Anon, Anon." I go to his room to respond. I find my friend stone cold dead. I immediately freak the hell out. I just stand there in shock. I take a minute to get my shit together and then call 911. I get instructed by the dispatcher on how to resuscitate him. No bueno. It's not long before the ambulance and police arrive and the paramedics finally take over. I give a statement to the police. The medical examiner is pretty certain that it was heart failure due to natural causes. They estimate the time of death as several hours before and possibly even the previous evening. The dude had been dead, long dead. My face went, I'd been hanging with my dead friend all day long, and I did not even know it. My face went. I'd heard him call my name long after he would have been dead. My face went. The only reason I even went to check on him and found that he was dead is that I heard him call my name. This just happened to me a few hours ago. I'm obviously not a kid, but there were no other creepy pasta/life experience threads. Anyway, I am still feeling sick over this, and maybe not around to respond for very long.